This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and no, it's not exactly a review. It's not really a smackdown either. Instead, we're going to explain pen technologies today. I know a lot of you are confused or you don't know which to pick, and there's all sorts of pen technologies available on the market. We're primarily talking about Windows PCs and Windows tablets today. We'll bring in Android a little bit and the iPad as well, though. We'll touch on Wacom, N-Trig, Synaptics, and capacitive styluses and more. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand the difference between them and hopefully know what you need to buy. Well, we have a lot of products on the table, don't we here? And what's special about all of these? All of them except for one come with and can use a digital pen. This is Microsoft Surface Pro 3 here. This has an N-Trig digital pen. Previous Surface Pros had a Wacom, or Wacom, however you want to say it, digital pen. And here we have the Samsung Galaxy Note Pro 12.2. This is running Android, so this is the odd man out among the Windows tablets, but still this one has S Pen, which is actually a Wacom pen as well. ThinkPad Yoga over here, available with both pen and touch, also Wacom. This is the iPad mini with Retina display. No digitizer for pen built in, and we'll explain what that means in a minute. It does work with capacitive stylus. Lenovo ThinkPad 10, that's an Intel Atom Windows 8 tablet. Wacom pen again. Back there, the Sony Vaio Flip 15 has an N-Trig digitizer and digital pen. Now, Sony didn't include the pen in the box, so that's sold separately, but and that makes it confusing because usually you get the pen in the box if in fact it does have an active digitizer, but yes, it does. Dell Venue 8 Pro, little Windows 8 Atom tablet that has a Synaptics pen, the new player on the block. So we're going to check them all out now and talk about the differences. So, first off, in the world of Windows, to a lesser extent, but still somewhat in Android land, two major brands of digitizers. Wacom, which has been around for more than 10 years since the original tablet PC came out, again, more than 10 years ago, and the new player on the block, N-Trig, who's also been around for, more than 5 years, 6 years, and some of you may have memories of very early N-Trig pens and digitizers on some older HP kind of tablet devices or convertible tablet, and it wasn't so hot, it wasn't that impressive. Well, they've come a long way, so we're going to talk about that too. Then there's Synaptics, the new kid on the block, and that's in the Dell Venue 8 Pro, which is the Windows 8-inch tablet here. And that uses a technology that in some ways is more similar to N-Trig. It uses active digitizer parts inside of the pen itself. There's a quadruple A battery both in N-Trig pens and in Synaptics pens. There is no battery in a Wacom pen. And lastly, here's our iPad mini with Retina display, and as I think most of you know by now, there's no such thing as a true digital pen for this guy. You can use a capacitive stylus on, so let's talk about capacitive stylus. Now, a capacitive stylus will work on any Windows touchscreen product, any Android touchscreen product. As long as the capacitive display, capacitive stylus will work. Notice how fat the tip is. Now, this is a particularly small one. They come in all sorts of different sizes and designs and all that sort of thing. But they're always going to have a fat tip because what they're doing is mimicking the capacitance of our finger, and that takes about at least a 5 pixel radius, really more like 10 to 15. So that's why these things are not so precise. They're not fine point tips. Also, because it's based on the capacitive touch sensitivity of the screen, what happens is if you rest your hand on the screen and touch the pen to the screen at the same time, on a multi-touch screen you're going to get vectoring. That means it's going to try to connect the lines if you're doing something like drawing, or it's going to get a little confused as to what you're doing. So that's the drawback if you're using something like the iPad or any Windows touchscreen only or Android touchscreen only product, is you can't rest your hand on the glass when you're writing or drawing. That feels a little bit unnatural. And it's fairly imprecise given this tip. Taking notes with this sucks. Hate to say it, but it really does. It's not a very fulfilling experience because of that. It's better on bigger screens, given that you're going to be writing in big, fat, kind of gross lines, but still not the greatest thing. As a pointing device, it gets the job done, but honestly, with Android or iOS, the pointing business really doesn't matter much because they're so well optimized for touch. Now, with Windows 8, particularly if you're in the desktop environment, sure, sometimes the targets are pretty small, and even a capacitive stylus could help there if you happen to buy a Windows 8 or 8.1 tablet, convertible, or laptop with a touchscreen. So here we have the iPad mini with Retina display, just so you can see what it's like to write notes. See the fine ruled paper here. I personally could never write that small with the capacitive stylus, but I'm going to try to write. I was writing the word hello in case you can't tell right there. And it is doing a pretty good job of ignoring my hand, but I did get some lines over there. That's where I rested my knuckle. So not really easy to be tidy, which is what I'm trying to write now. So not that fulfilling. So for those of you who are looking at the iPad for note-taking, not the world's greatest solution. iPad great for a lot of things, not so much for this. Likewise, that's true again for Windows 8 touchscreen only tablets and for Android touchscreen only tablets too. Capacitive, meh. So next we're going to look at the Surface Pro 3, which uses an N-Trig technology inside. This is N-Trig made pen basically and digitizer. Here's the other important thing. If you don't have the digitizer built into the tablet or laptop itself, there's a display component to all these things, you can't use one of these precise digital pens. Capacitive, like I said, no problem there. So yes, you need the correct digitizer, the correct model. So in case of things like the Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga, where it's available with and without the pen, all of them do have touch, you have to make sure that you get the right one. If it didn't ship with the pen on the ThinkPad Yoga, it won't work with digital pen. Anyway, so this is the Surface Pro 3 pen. It comes with it, and notice how much it looks like the Sony Vaio Flip 15 pen. Now I know some of you think that N-Trig is owned by Sony. They are not. It's just that Sony has happened to use N-Trig a lot lately, like in their Flip series, for example. But we also saw that in the Asus Tai Chi, and we've seen N-Trig pens used in Android. In fact, the HTC Jetstream and the HTC Flyer use them. Now, the pen technology keeps improving. The overall design is very similar. Metal bodies, which is nice. Fairly normal size pen, not particularly long, but pretty normal size. Quadruple A battery. Again, you unscrew it. There's a pen battery inside of here. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll unscrew this one right here. And you can see it. Quadruple A, the next smallest size after triple A battery. A little bit harder to find, but you'll find them at probably CVS and certainly some consumer electronics stores. So those pens are typically good for a year, 2 years, depends on how much you use them. They have two buttons on the side, so usually one defaults to the erase function and the other one, it depends on the application. Precise pen tips. Now there's a slight difference in the Surface Pro 3 pen. First, a not real important architectural difference is they did use a somewhat softer nib on the tip. Nib is another word for pen tip, and yes, you can yank these out, but unlike Wacom, there aren't a whole lot of alternative or any real alternative pen tips to choose from here. The other thing is Microsoft added Bluetooth to this pen, so when you click the button, it will launch magically OneNote, just like that. So there you have it. These are interchangeable. This Sony pen would write right here just as much as well as the Surface pen. So they are interchangeable. So that means for you people who bought a Flip 15 and you can't find those Sony pens because they're getting hard to find now, you can use a Surface Pro 3 pen. Works just great. So here we have OneNote for note taking. And if I want to write really, really small, about as small as I could write on paper, and see my hand is resting on the glass right there. I may have hideous handwriting, but there it is. And it looks pretty much like it would on a piece of paper because we have a very fine and very precise pen tip right here with palm rejection, so you can rest your hand on the glass. Great also obviously for drawing there. And one thing about N-Trig that's quite good is that they have very good edge calibration. I can write right out to the edge there. And that's something that's a little bit weak for Wacom. They sometimes get a little wonky. And also there's very little pen tip parallax on recent N-Trig models, like the Flip 15, like the Surface Pro 3, for example. So where I'm writing is really right under the pen's tip. So that's very nice for people who are driven crazy by pen offset. Now there's calibration. Windows has built-in calibration 4-point. It's pretty rudimentary, so you can calibrate it to how you hold the pen. Also, with N-Trig, you can have the pen leaning pretty far over because the important electronic parts are right near the very tip of the pen. So, for those of you who tilt a lot, that's nice. With Wacom, because the important parts are a little bit higher up in the pen barrel, if you tilt a lot, it will kind of throw it off and confuse it a bit. Now, the challenge with N-Trig has been lack of pressure sensitivity. For those of you who have been watching our video reviews, you know about that already. Now, anything that uses the modern Windows Ink API, that means Fresh Paint, all the Metro drawing applications, ArtRage, OneNote, Word 2013, they use the Windows Ink API, more modern API, so they work. Older legacy art apps are still relying on WinTab drivers like Photoshop, Corel Painter, those sort of things. then you need WinTab if you want the pressure sensitivity part, which is mostly important to artists. It makes writing, even just, writing here, seem more natural because pens and pencils respond with, well, pressure, don't they? So it just feels and looks good. But if you're doing art applications, it matters. So N-Trig has released WinTab drivers with the release of the Surface Pro 3. Those WinTab drivers for Surface Pro 3, they'll work just great on your Sony Vaio Flip 15, should work on the Asus Tai-Chi, so keep that in mind if you need that. The challenge is N-Trig, 256 levels of pressure sensitivity versus 1024 on Wacom. And N-Trig says it's really a matter of the pressure curves being tuned. That doesn't matter. It's hard to say which it is because honestly the pressure curves are not as consistent with N-Trig yet from application to application. Corel Painter 13 or X3, however you want to say that. Pen pressure registering isn't the world's best. Photoshop, CC, and CS6, it is pretty good. Metro apps that use the Windows Ink API and they don't care about WinTab, they're all pretty good. So, if you're an artist and you spend a lot of time in Corel Painter, it's going to make a difference to you. If you use Paint Tool SAI, it's going to make a difference to you. Photoshop is pretty darn good. I still think it's a little bit smoother and silkier, though, inside of something like the ThinkPad Yoga with a Wacom digitizer on it. So now on to Wacom, and a lot of you art types are familiar with Wacom already. Even some of you veteran note takers have been using tablet PCs for a long time. ThinkPad Yoga right here. This is the one that Yoga's. It does all those neat tricks, but it's the ThinkPad line. It is the only one of the Yogas that's available with an active digitizer. Now the ones that Lenovo sells direct on their website all have the full HD display and the pen. But there are some versions that have the full HD display but no pen, and those are often sold at some retailers, like Fry's carries that, for example, for those of you who are US shoppers and are familiar with Fry's. So that can be a little bit confusing. That's a whole other can of worms with the Yoga. In our full written review, we list some model numbers so it will help you figure out a little bit which is which. Anyway, Wacom, very traditional, been around a long time, very established. Something much newer on the block, also ThinkPad 10 right here. This is an Intel Atom-based Windows 8.1 tablet that also comes with a pen. Now, got the keyboard dock here, just sits on it, that's optional. And the keyboard dock is what has a holder for the pen. The ThinkPad 10, funny, it comes with the bigger pen. There's no place to put it inside the body of this guy because it's, well, so thick relative to the tablet size, but that keyboard dock has it. So this is a pretty nice pen right here. We've got a little erasery kind of thing going on the butt end, so you can actually turn around and erase when you're doing art. Also, precise pen tip. Now, the pointing on this, I'll show you using the Yoga instead. Again, the pen tip offset can sometimes be an issue. Sometimes it's not, the line doesn't happen exactly where the pen is. And calibration is something that Wacom needs a little bit more often, and there's a control panel for that. But let's look at the Yoga and see. So now we've got our ThinkPad Yoga with Adobe Photoshop CC here, and this is the little pen that comes with the big, nice 12.5-inch convertible. It's a really little silly pen, isn't it? But the good thing is it actually fits in a hole in the body of the laptop, so you're not going to lose it or anything like that. Now this gets into another point with Wacom, which is you can use different pens, and there are several on the market that are meant for tablet PCs. Here is the Bamboo Feel-It pen. Now it gets a little confusing because Wacom also makes Intuos tablets and various things. Those won't work. But anyway, there are some aftermarket pens. That's always a nice thing. Now here, as I go for the menus with this big pen, which I've calibrated with most recently, because even if you change pens you might have to, there's a little parallax. My pen tip is actually up on the black above the screen. So I see how high I am off of this right here. And let's switch over to the actual ThinkPad pen that came with it. And the parallax gets even worse to the point where I can't even use it. So that's what I'm talking about, where Wacom has a little bit more of this kind of problem. Now, if I was actually drawing, it would also be quite annoying because, well, you know, you like to draw where you have to draw. So, what do you do then? You go back to your desktop. So, depending on whether you have the Wacom driver installed, if you do, you'll have the pen tablet properties here on non-Wacom, or if you haven't installed WinTab, you'll still have tablet PC settings, and see here's calibrate. You can calibrate pen or touch. So you do this, you do this, you do this, and you do this, and you say, yeah, that looks good, and let's go back into Photoshop. And now it's much better. Aha! So there you go. You have to do that every so often. So let's create a new file. So here we are, and we've got our drawing pad, and we can draw a nice little flower pot, and we have really nice, silky, smooth pressure sensitivity there. And it's all great for art, and I'm resting my hand on the glass, so that's all good. Now, if you go out to the edges here, it's going to be fine, because this is not running full screen, but as you saw, as you get closer to the edges for those apps that you are using with drawing full screen, usually it gets a little wonky towards the very edges of the screen. Now, do you draw a lot on the edges of the screen? Probably not so much, so I don't think that matters. So mostly, the only thing that people complain about is the pen tip offset, which you can fix with calibration, and sometimes you have to do it fairly often. But look at the lovely variation of lines that I'm getting here. That's really nice. Very, very artistic. So now we're back to N-Trig, so we can compare what the drawing is like. Also in Photoshop CC, this happens to be the Sony Vaio Flip 15. Again, Surface Pro 3 uses the same technology, so pretty much interchangeable, and I'm using those latest Surface Pro 3 WinTab drivers on here. So when I go to the menu, well, looky, it's right directly underneath my pen tip all the time. That's pretty awesome-manious. I like that a lot. Good feature right there. Now when we're drawing, I can rest my hand on the glass, but with this one I have to be more careful. See the little dots underneath there now? It sees the pen tip. You really have to make sure it sees the pen tip because the hover distance is shorter on N-Trig versus Wacom. That drives some people crazy. They want to just be able to go boom right away, and you really have to make sure, because otherwise you might accidentally slide this canvas around, that sort of thing. So let's do some drawing of lines. It's not quite as, you see the variation in lines I'm getting here, it's not quite as impressive. Oddly, there's a little lag, usually there isn't right here, but so for art people, I still say that Wacom is the way to go right now for pen pressure support. Now, for those of you who want to see that again on Surface Pro 3, understandably still using N-Trig technology, but some improvements in the whole digitizer experience, not to mention Surface Pro 3 and its great ergonomics. I love this mode for the stand here. If you're drawing, you can actually do that with it. And assuming you don't have a real heavy hand, you're pretty good. So, good pen alignment, yes, we have that right out to the edges, good times. Menus are actually operating as expected. Again, that's the good part of N-Trig. Still have to make sure it sees the pen first, otherwise, you know, see what I just did? I accidentally just moved my canvas all over the place. I kind of miss that hover distance that we have with Wacom when it comes to that. So, make sure it sees the pen tip. And actually a little bit nicer with the Surface Pro 3 in terms of the variation of lines that I'm getting, but I'm not getting quite as good as Wacom, but it's pretty close. See those nice little feathery lines I can do, the fat lines, that kind of thing. So it's working out pretty well. So the minor improvements that we see in the N-Trig on the Surface Pro 3 do make a difference, and I'm getting some line response here that's pretty good. So lastly, we have our Dell Venue 8 Pro here. It and the Venue 11 Pro support Synaptics pen right here, Synaptics pen. This also has one of those quadruple A batteries inside. It is not interchangeable. None of these are interchangeable. A Wacom pen won't work on an N-Trig, a Synaptics pen won't work on either of those, and so on. So you actually have to have the right pen for the digitizer technology involved here. Synaptics, the new kid on the block, they've been making things like touchpads and touchscreens for a long time. They have not done digital pens. Those of you who watch a review of the lovely Venue 8 Pro know that when the pen came out, it was a kind of possessed by the devil disaster. It would do all sorts of things. So the hover distance was so great you could really be like this far away and it would see the pen. It was pretty darn weird. Now you actually have to touch the pen. Now as a pointing device, it's really pretty lame. It still doesn't work too well. It's a little bit weird and laggy on there. It does function better on the desktop. So let's go to the desktop here and see. So now it's working. And now this is the latest pen. Now Dell has released a couple of revisions of this pen. This is the latest one. So we don't have any more hover click from hell. I can hold my pen here day and night and it's not going to start demonically doing things I didn't intend to without touching the glass or pressing any buttons. The bad part is it's gotten a little insensitive. They kind of overcompensated, so you really have to work hard to make it do anything. There is a right click button here, by the way, if you want to do that. So it's a little numb. It's not really ideal. For artwork, it's particularly not so great. Let's try that out with Art Rage. Now, Art Rage doesn't require a WinTab driver. There are no WinTab drivers for Synaptics. My guess is that there never will be. They're kind of, well, they're not really being used anywhere except for in these Dell Venue, so there's no real motivation for Adobe to get going with WinTab. So I can rest my hand on the glass because this is an active digital pen, and I can draw, but sometimes it misses strokes. You really have to press a little bit harder. It just doesn't really always keep up real well. As a note-taking solution, it is much better. You can see the writing is okay. It will still sometimes miss strokes with this latest version of the Dell pen, but precise, yes it is. Nice pointed pen tip. Digital, yes, you get palm rejection. Well-tuned, not really by any means. So not the world's greatest solution. It is better than nothing, and the nice thing about the Dell Venue 8 Pro, for example, and 11 Pro, they are very affordable. So for those of you who don't have the money to get into some of those bigger things, it's certainly more responsive and better to work with than a capacitive stylus, just not as far along in development as Wacom and N-Trig are. So that's the Synaptics pen that comes with Dell, or that's available for the Dell Venue 8 Pro. Not included, you actually have to pay extra for this. Not much money though, it's like $30 or so. The quadruple A battery in here, it doesn't have the life of N-Trig. Now there was a problem with the battery draining really quickly with the first few versions of this pen, and I'm still seeing some battery drain even with the newer version of the pen, so it's more like every month I've been having to replace the pen battery for this one. So last up on our adventure through the land of pens, we're switching over to Android. This is the Samsung Galaxy Note Pro 12.2. What I say here, same is true for the Note 8 and the Note 10.1. They all use an S Pen, which is Samsung's name for the digital pen. It's a Wacom technology, just like we saw pretty much in the Windows tablets. Not quite as fancy, the driver and all that sort of thing. So for Android, that whole Wacom versus N-Trig and WinTab thing isn't an issue. That's something that's relating to the OS for Windows. Not an issue here. It really doesn't matter. Our programs support N-Trig and Wacom equally as well. Now this is a skinny little pen. It fits right in the silo over there. It's not bad. You'll get a hand cramp if you use it for a while, but remember this Wacom bamboo fielded pen that I was using on the ThinkPad Yoga. That works on this too. Again, same tablet PC kind of technology. So if you want a nicer pen like this, they even sell these at Best Buy near the Samsung tablets for a reason, because well, people like them better. By the way, the Note 3, the Note 2, also using the same pen technology inside. So there are quite a few art apps available on Android that do support the S Pen, and you can see I have a bunch of them installed right here. So let's just take a look at Quill first for you note-taking types. Nice, tidy, works. Again, we have palm rejection. That means I can rest my hand on the screen. Good idea to make sure it sees the pen first. Notice the hover distance. I'm, several centimeters away, so that's pretty good. You can write fast. Works just fine. Even though it's note-taking where pressure matters less, you do get pressure sensitivity. It's a fine note-taking tool. Yes, it is. If you want that sort of thing, you've got it right here. And precise. Nice fine tip again, because you can use any Wacom pen, including the included one. There's Sketchbook Pro available for this. This is Infinite Painter. So again, I know you've seen this horse drawing before if you watch a lot of these, but hey, it's handy and I have it. So supports pressure sensitivity, heavy line, a light line. Not bad. I think that Photoshop CS6 or CC in Windows gives you a little bit more of a pleasing experience here. You can see sometimes it drops a line, but overall it's pretty good with a lot of gradations there. You can do very heavy fill strokes, and it's pretty nice for drawing and painting too. Android art programs are not as sophisticated as Windows desktop programs, so obviously it depends on your needs. If you're a quick sketch artist, if you want to just sketch up ideas on the go, this is a great thing. If you need the full power of Photoshop CS6 or CC, Corel Painter, Manga, again, you're still going to want to look at Windows, but for those who are happy with the more casual set of tools and pen response that we have here, this can work as well. So there it is, our big explanation of digital pen technology as it's available in 2014. Probably going to stay the same for the next couple of years, give or take a couple of little inventions, but now you get the idea about active pens, capacitive stylus, that whole thing. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to watch the video review of all these products that we've shown you right here. Read our written review on mobiletechreview.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel.